My wife said they're all married about her work trip. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My wife kept saying I was acting paranoid right up until I put the hotel receipt on our kitchen table. That was the moment the air in our house changed. Claire stopped pacing, stopped doing that offended little laugh she used whenever I noticed something she didn't want noticed, and just stared at the paper like it had crawled there by itself. We'd been married 6 years, long enough for our routines to harden into something I thought was trust. I handled the quiet parts of life, paying bills on time, fixing the bathroom fan, remembering her mother's birthday, making coffee before she woke up. Claire handled the shiny parts. She was the one who could walk into a room full of strangers and make it feel like she'd been invited personally by the universe. I'm not a jealous guy. I know every husband says that, right before sounding jealous, but it's true. I work as a fleet maintenance coordinator for the city, which means my days are schedules, repair orders, invoices, people calling because a truck won't start. I like facts. I like boring things that stay where you put them. Claire used to say that was what made me safe. You're steady, she'd tell our friends, squeezing my arm like she was proud of me. Daniel is impossible to rattle. That's probably why her sentence lodged in me the way it did. She'd mentioned her 3-day work trip like it was weather. Conference in Chicago, client dinner, team workshop, back Thursday. I asked who was going. She was halfway through zipping a garment bag when she said, "Relax. They're all married." Not "you can trust me." Not "it's just work." Not even "you should come next time." Just that. They're all married. As if wedding rings were security badges. As if vows were a fence. As if being around married people somehow erased the possibility of lying. I replayed that sentence for days, then for weeks, then through the exact moment I learned why she'd chosen those words so carefully. Then Claire looked at the screenshot and finally stopped calling me crazy. Before that trip, our marriage looked normal enough that other people used us as an example. We had a small brick house outside Columbus with a vegetable bed I kept meaning to rebuild and a sectional couch Claire swore was temporary for almost 4 years. Friday nights were takeout and whatever prestige show she wanted me to pretend I understood. Sunday mornings, I made eggs, she answered a few emails just to get ahead. And then we'd wander Target arguing softly about lampshades and storage bins like we were rehearsing a future we expected to keep. Claire worked in event strategy for a healthcare software company. It sounded vague to me, but she was good at it. She could build a client dinner from scratch, smooth over vendor mistakes, remember names, remember allergies, remember who needed flattery and who needed data. Watching her work was like watching someone palm coins. She was all grace and timing. I trusted that confidence because I thought it came from competence, not performance. There were small things, though, not red flags. More like details I filed away because they felt unfinished. She started taking her phone face down to the bathroom. She'd smile at messages and then close her expression before looking up. Once, maybe 4 months before the trip, I walked into the kitchen and heard her say, "No, he won't ask. That's not his personality." She turned fast, saw me, and laughed. "Nina," she said immediately, though Nina doesn't laugh like the man who had just laughed on speaker. I let it go because marriage, if you want it to survive, requires a lot of choosing not to become a detective. Claire even kissed my cheek and called me nosy in a playful voice that made suspicion feel childish. Later that night, she curled up against me and asked whether I ever worried we'd get boring. I told her boring was underrated. She smiled, but not like she agreed. There was also Ryan. I barely knew him then, just the name of a co-worker who surfaced too often in harmless stories. Ryan said this. Ryan forgot that. Ryan somehow always ended up driving because he liked control. Claire rolled her eyes when she mentioned him, which I would later realize was its own kind of camouflage. I remembered that old joke only when Ryan's name started showing up everywhere. The trip came up on a Tuesday while I was unloading groceries, and Claire was moving through the kitchen with that efficient restlessness she got when her mind was already somewhere else. She had her laptop open at the island, AirPods in, half listening to a call while texting with one hand. I asked whether we still planned to visit my aunt that weekend, and she mouthed, "No, Chicago," then pointed at the screen like I should already know what that meant. After the call, she gave me the polished version. 3 days. Leave Monday morning, back Thursday night. Quarterly leadership workshop, vendor meetings, 1 client dinner, maybe a rooftop reception if the weather held. Her team was flying in from different offices. She said it the way people describe a dental cleaning: annoying, necessary, completely unromantic. I remember drying my hands and asking, "Who's going from your side?" She shrugged like the question was too ordinary to deserve weight. "The usual group. Ryan, Melissa, Kevin, probably Tara for one day." I said, "Ryan as in the guy who's always driving?" She laughed. "Yes, Ryan as in the guy you irrationally dislike because he says 'circle back' too much." I don't dislike him. I dislike corporate phrases. She zipped a navy dress into a garment bag and finally looked up. "Daniel, relax. They're all married." It was the speed of it that got me. No pause. No curiosity about why I was asking. Just a rehearsed line, dropped so smoothly it sounded prepackaged. I even remember thinking that she must have said it before, maybe to another spouse at another kitchen counter, because it landed too perfectly. Then I hated myself for thinking that. I told myself I was being insecure, provincial, weird about her job because mine had never required cocktail hours and hotel blocks. So I played the decent husband. I offered to drive her to the airport. I asked whether she wanted me to watch the dog. I reminded her to pack the charger she always forgot. She smiled, came over, and fixed my collar like I was the one traveling. "You know I love you, right?" she said. That should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like an addition to a script I hadn't heard before. The way she smiled after saying it made my stomach turn later. The first day of the trip was normal enough to embarrass me. Claire texted from the gate, texted after landing, sent me a picture of the hotel room with one of those fake complaints she used when she actually liked something. "Terrible view, miserable king bed, tragic lighting." She wrote under a photo of a lakefront window and a room bigger than our bedroom. I replied with a picture of the dog asleep under my desk and told myself that was the end of the story. The weirdness started small, which made it harder to defend in my own head. Claire always called on trips. Not because I demanded it, because she liked narrating things. Airport delays, rude bartenders, co-workers she found exhausting. But that first night her usual post-dinner call came 40 minutes late, and when I answered, she sounded flattened out, like she'd stepped into a hallway to play the role of my wife for 3 minutes. "Sorry," she said. "Long dinner. What did they make you eat?" She laughed too quickly. "Tiny expensive things. You'd hate it." There was noise behind her, but not restaurant noise. Not silverware, not layered voices. It sounded like elevator chimes and distant music. "You back at the hotel?" I asked. "No, still downstairs. People are lingering." Then a man's voice said something I couldn't make out, close enough to distort her end of the line. Claire immediately said, "I have to go. Battery's dying." Even though she'd texted me 20 minutes earlier that she'd brought the portable charger I reminded her about. Day 2, she missed my lunch call entirely and responded 2 hours later with back-to-back sessions. "Sorry, babe." That night she sent 3 photos from a conference room, all taken tight enough to avoid showing anyone else. In one, reflected in the black edge of a monitor, I could see the shoulder of a gray suit jacket near her. Maybe nothing. Probably nothing. Still, her text started sounding less like Claire and more like a customer service version of her. Short, correct, oddly polished. "Crazy day. Just exhausted. Heading up soon. Miss you too." By the second night, her texts sounded like someone else was proofreading them. I didn't become suspicious in some cinematic way. I became tired. That was the ugliest part of it. Suspicion didn't make me sharp. It made me stupid and ashamed. I'd pick up my phone at red lights and reread the same 6 messages, looking for tone like a teenager. I'd put it down and tell myself to grow up. Then I'd remember that line, "They're all married," and feel my chest tighten again for reasons I couldn't defend out loud. On the 3rd morning, I almost apologized to Claire in advance for whatever invisible crime of doubt I was committing. Instead, I texted Nina. She'd known me since college and had no patience for drama. We met that evening at a coffee shop near her office, and I hated how wild I sounded as soon as I started trying to explain myself. "She's on a work trip," I said. "Nothing has happened. I just think something feels edited." Nina stirred her tea without looking at me. "Edited is a good word." "See, that sounds insane." "No. Insane is when you invent evidence. You're describing behavior." I told her about the thin calls, the overneat texts, the sentence about everyone being married. Nina's face did something subtle when I repeated that line. Not surprise. Recognition. "That's a strange reassurance," she said. "Night?" But then I feel ridiculous because what am I supposed to say? Sorry your coworkers have spouses. I'm scared anyway. You're not scared because they're married, she said. You're scared because Claire used marriage like a sedative. That sentence landed harder than I wanted. I stared at my coffee and admitted something I hadn't said aloud yet. That I felt myself becoming someone I didn't respect. A man scanning reflections in photos. A husband noticing response times. Nina leaned forward. Listen to me carefully, she said. You do not get points for ignoring what your body is already reacting to. Don't accuse her without evidence. But don't gaslight yourself either. I laughed because hearing that word applied to me felt melodramatic. Then my phone buzzed. Claire had finally responded to the message I'd sent 3 hours earlier. Sorry, babe. Panels ran late. With the team now. Attached was a photo of a hotel bar menu. No people. No time. No reason. Nina didn't tell me I was right. She asked why I was shaking. The first hard clue came from something insultingly mundane. Our joint credit card app. Claire and I kept one shared card for groceries, utilities, and travel emergencies. Most of her work expenses went on a corporate card, so when I saw a charge from Larkspur Roof Chi for $86.40 at 11:48 p.m., I almost ignored it. Maybe the company card declined. Maybe she covered drinks for a client and would expense it later. On its own, it wasn't a smoking gun. It was just late. Too late for the version of the evening she'd given me. At 10:07 that night, she had texted. Back in my room. Dead tired. Early start tomorrow. There was even a selfie attached, dimly lit, face washed, hair tied back. The kind of sleepy proof you send when you want to close a conversation. I'd replied with a heart and a joke about conference coffee tasting like grief. She sent one more LOL, and that was it. So why was our card used at a rooftop bar over an hour and a half later? I sat there on the edge of our bed with the app open, trying to solve it in the most innocent way possible. Maybe she'd ordered room service through a bar terminal. Maybe someone borrowed her card. Maybe the transaction posted late. I was still manufacturing excuses when another detail surfaced. The hotel she'd shown me in the arrival photo was the Westin Harbor. Larkspur Rooftop wasn't in that building. It was 3 blocks away, on top of the Mercer Hotel. I Googled it because I wanted to be wrong. Instead, I found an Instagram page filled with skyline views, date night cocktails, and a Wednesday industry mixer promotion that ran until midnight. At 12:14 a.m., Claire had texted me. Can barely keep my eyes open. At 11:48 p.m., our shared card had paid for 2 old fashions and truffle fries at a bar she had never mentioned in a hotel that wasn't hers. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I screenshotted the charge, the bar location, and the walking distance between the 2 hotels. Then I stared at her sleepy selfie and noticed something I hadn't before. She was wearing the same gold earrings she only wore when she expected to be looked at. The receipt time didn't just bother me. It erased Claire's entire story. Once I had one lie I could hold in my hand, the rest stopped feeling theoretical. I took a sick day I didn't need and spent Thursday morning doing the kind of digging that still makes me wince when I think about it. Not because it was wrong, exactly. Because it meant some part of me already knew the marriage I thought I was defending was gone. I pulled up the itinerary Claire had forwarded me the week before. It listed the Westin Harbor, conference sessions from 9 to 4, dinner with clients Wednesday at 7, and a Thursday checkout. No mention of Larkspur. No mention of the Mercer. Then I searched my message history for Ryan. At first it was stupid little things. Claire saying Ryan got food poisoning in Denver. Claire saying Ryan's wife was adorable but intense. Claire saying Ryan always volunteered to book cars because nobody else could be trusted. I kept scrolling. Last fall, after a Nashville trip, Claire had texted me. Back at hotel, thank God. Ryan was being impossible. 2 minutes later, ignore that. Wrong person LOL. I remembered laughing about it at the time. Now I took a screenshot. I checked Claire's old travel photos on her social media. She hardly posted coworkers, but Ryan kept slipping into corners of frames like a continuity error. A shoulder beside hers at a trade show booth. His watch reflected in a restaurant window. The same gray suit from the monitor reflection, now unmistakable once I knew to look for it. By afternoon, I was deep enough in my own marriage to feel sick. I called the main number of Claire's company and asked, pretending I needed to reach her urgently, whether the Chicago workshop had wrapped for the day. The receptionist said, "Workshop? I think the client summit ended yesterday." When I asked whether Ryan was still with the team, she said, "He flew in this morning for the investor dinner." That didn't match Claire's version. She had said Ryan traveled out Monday with the group. Instead, according to someone in the office, he arrived later and specifically for a dinner she'd barely mentioned. I wrote everything down in a notebook because facts felt safer on paper than in my head. Dates, times, charges, contradictions, names. Ryan's name wasn't in the itinerary, but it was suddenly in everything else. The thing that broke me wasn't finding a new lie. It was finding an old one. That night, after Claire texted that her flight was delayed, I searched my email for past itineraries because I wanted to see whether I was rewriting history to fit one bad trip. I found 3 confirmations from the previous 18 months: Nashville, Baltimore, Minneapolis. Same structure every time. Hotel, panels, dinners, vague references to leadership events. I almost closed the laptop. Then I opened the Minneapolis one because I remembered how oddly affectionate Claire had been when she came home from that trip, almost relieved, as if I'd passed a test I didn't know I was taking. Buried in the thread was a message she'd sent me right before departure. "Don't overthink this one. They're all married, remember?" I just sat there staring at it. It wasn't spontaneous in Chicago. It was reusable. A phrase. A tool she had pulled from the same drawer more than once. That turned my stomach in a different way, because cheating, awful as it is, can still live in the category of human weakness. Scripted reassurance belongs to manipulation. It means the lie didn't happen in the moment. It was prepared. I called Nina and read the line aloud from the old email. She went quiet, then said, "That's not comfort. That's conditioning." I hated how accurate that felt. Claire wasn't just asking for trust. She was shaping the way I interpreted doubt. Married equals safe. Work trip equals boring. Ryan equals annoying coworker. Every detail had been labeled in advance, so I'd stop examining it. I went back through old receipts. Nashville had a charge from a hotel lounge at 12:03 a.m. On a night Claire told me she was grading proposals in bed. Baltimore had a rideshare to an address that wasn't the conference hotel, then another one 90 minutes later. Each charge was small enough to look accidental, forgettable, marital static. Together, they looked like repetition. For the first time, I let myself imagine the possibility that the damage wasn't one bad decision in Chicago. It was a system. That was when I realized the line wasn't reassurance, it was training. By Friday, I stopped trying to answer the question of whether Claire had slept with Ryan. A bigger question had replaced it. How many people knew the story I was supposed to believe? I found part of that answer by accident. Claire had once used my laptop to print seating charts, and her work email had stayed logged in through the browser. I know how bad that sounds. I knew it then too. I sat there for a minute with the inbox visible, feeling like I was crossing some last invisible line. Then I remembered the rooftop receipt, the recycled reassurance, the old ride shares, and I clicked. Most of it was boring. Vendor updates, dietary requests, presentation decks. Then I searched spouse and hotel. A thread between Claire, Ryan, and another coworker named Melissa popped up from 2 months earlier. Not explicit. Worse in a way. Efficient. Melissa wrote, "Need final rooming list before sends go out. Use spouse's safe version for calendar invites." Ryan replied, "Also keep after-hours stuff off shared itineraries. Learned that one already." Claire answered 31 minutes later, "Yep. Standard practice." I read those 3 lines 6 times. Spouse's safe version. After-hours stuff off shared itineraries. Standard practice. That phrase changed everything. Their little ecosystem had language for deception. A clean version for partners at home, and a real version for whoever counted after dark. Another email confirmed room blocks at 2 hotels, one official, one overflow, though the overflow property matched the Mercer. A calendar attachment labeled Client Hospitality ran from 10:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. On the exact night, Claire told me she was asleep. I printed everything. Not because I was planning revenge yet. I needed something physical to prove to myself I hadn't gone insane inside my own house. Then one final detail dropped into place. Melissa's signature block included a cell number. I searched it online and found a public event page photo from last year. There they all were, Claire, Ryan, Melissa, 2 others, smiling at a hotel bar. In the comments, a woman named Megan had written, "Cute group. Glad all your spouses can sleep easy." My hands went numb reading that. The more I found, the less this looked like one private betrayal. When Claire came home Thursday night, she looked beautiful in the specific way that made me doubt every ugly conclusion I'd reached alone. Airport fluorescent lights usually flatten people. Somehow she stepped off the escalator at baggage claim looking rested, expensive, almost tender. She saw me, smiled wide, and walked straight into my arms like she'd spent the whole trip missing me in simple, uncomplicated good faith. "God, I'm glad to be home," she said into my neck. I held her too long because my body still knew her before it knew the evidence. That was the humiliating truth. Even after the receipts, the emails, the pattern, some animal part of me wanted her to be exhausted and innocent and slightly annoyed at travel. On the drive back, she filled the car with normal details so quickly I could barely respond. Melissa got drunk and overshared about daycare costs. The keynote was terrible. Ryan forgot his charger and had to borrow one, like a child. A client from Milwaukee flirted with everyone. It was such a good performance precisely because almost all of it was probably true. At a stoplight, she touched my wrist and said, "You okay? You're quiet." "Long week," I said. "Mine too," she replied, with a laugh that somehow included me inside her hardship. Those dinners are brutal. At home, she unpacked immediately, another thing that made me waver. Guilty people in movies hide suitcases. Claire folded blouses, tossed dry cleaning into a pile, set out the little hotel soaps because she knew I liked them, then came up behind me while I was pretending to rinse coffee mugs. "I missed you," she said. I wanted to say, "Then why did you lie?" Instead, I said nothing, and she took my silence for stress or fatigue or whatever harmless explanation she preferred. That night, she curled against me in bed, warm and familiar, and my chest hurt with the effort of not turning toward her. I lay there listening to her breathing settle and wondered whether this was the cruelest part of betrayal. Not the sex, not the lies, but the way it asks you to keep participating in your own old life until you can no longer stand the performance. When she kissed me at baggage claim, I almost apologized to her. The next morning, I decided not to confront Claire with a pile of documents like some cornered husband on daytime television. I wanted to see how she handled ordinary questions first. Not because I enjoyed it, because by then I understood that facts alone weren't the whole story. I needed to watch how she managed reality in real time. We were in the kitchen. She was making toast, wearing one of my t-shirts, hair damp from the shower, so domestic it almost felt obscene. "How was the rooftop thing?" I asked lightly. She didn't look up. "What rooftop thing?" "The reception you mentioned." I never said rooftop. Butter knife, plate, smooth motion. "There was a bar one night, but I left early." "Why?" There it was. Not denial exactly. Revision. She was narrowing the opening before I even stepped through it. "Just wondering," I said. "Was that at your hotel?" "Yeah, downstairs somewhere." I nodded like I was half listening. "And Ryan was there the whole trip?" This time she did look at me. "Not long. Just enough to measure risk." "Mostly. Why are you asking so many weirdly specific questions?" I shrugged, trying to picture your week. She smiled in that patient, superior way that made me feel 12. "Then picture conference rooms and bad wine, Daniel. It's not that interesting." Later, I asked what time her client dinner ended. She said around 9:30. In the car from the airport, she'd said close to 11. That night, I asked whether she'd stayed at the Westin the whole time. She said yes without hesitation. I asked whether the team used overflow rooms because the city was busy. She laughed and said, "No, this isn't Comic-Con." Each answer contradicted something concrete I already had. Not wildly. Precisely. She wasn't panicking. She was tuning the story, shaving off details, steering me away from the edges. And the more casual my questions sounded, the more affectionate she became. She made my favorite pasta. She suggested we go away for a weekend. That was when I understood something colder than anger. Claire wasn't only hiding what happened. She was studying whether I could still be guided back into the version of events she preferred. Then I asked one tiny question and watched her rewrite the night. I waited until Claire left for work Monday before I contacted Megan. I spent 20 minutes writing and deleting a message because there is no non-deranged way to introduce yourself to another man's wife and imply your marriages may be connected by the same lie. I finally sent the cleanest version possible through Facebook, using the photo comment I'd found as my only bridge. "Hi, Megan. You don't know me. I'm Daniel, Claire's husband. I'm sorry to message you like this, but I believe Ryan and Claire have been lying about work travel. I have evidence. If anything about his recent trips has felt off to you, I think we should talk." I expected silence, or anger, or a screenshot forwarded back to Ryan. Instead, she replied 90 minutes later, "Call me when you can." Her voice was flat in the way people sound when they are already standing on the edge of bad news. She didn't waste time being polite. She asked what I had. I told her about Chicago, the second hotel, the spouse's safe email, the reused line about everyone being married. She exhaled so slowly I thought the call had cut out. "He says that too," she said. Not the exact words every time. Same idea. Like marriage is supposed to make me stupid. Then she told me Ryan had been working late after local dinners for almost a year. Once, she'd driven past his office at 10:30 p.m. and his car wasn't there. Another time, he came home with a hotel key sleeve from the Mercer and claimed a vendor had handed it to him by accident. She had doubted herself for months because every time she pushed, he'd say she was spiraling. Then Megan sent me the thing I'd been missing. It was a screenshot from Ryan's iPad, taken months earlier when he'd left it syncing to their shared family album. The image showed a booking confirmation for the Mercer Hotel, not one room, but a corner suite, reserved under Ryan's rewards account during the same Chicago dates Claire had given me for the Westin. Two names were visible under guest access notes: R. Mercer and C. Bennett. Claire's maiden name was Bennett. She only used it professionally when she wanted some distance from our married life. That wasn't flirting. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was planning. The missing proof arrived from a woman who had no idea who I was. I confronted Claire that night at the kitchen table where we usually paid bills. I set out the papers in order because I knew if I let the conversation become emotional too early, she would drag it into fog and I would drown there with her. Credit card charge. Mercer map. Old email with the repeated line. Spouse's safe thread. Booking confirmation with her maiden name. She came in carrying takeout, saw my face, and stopped. "What is this?" she asked. "Sit down." That made her laugh once, sharp and disbelieving. "Daniel, what are you doing?" I slid the first screenshot toward her. "You told me you were back in your room at 10:07. Our card paid for drinks at Larkspur at 11:48. That bar is inside the Mercer. You told me you stayed at the Westin. Ryan's account booked a suite at the Mercer under his name and yours. Your email says there's a spouse's safe itinerary and after-hours events kept off shared calendars. Which part do you want to explain first?" For maybe 3 seconds, Claire looked frightened. Then the performance came back online. "This is insane," she said. "You went through my email?" "Yes." "So this is about privacy now?" "No. It's about reality." She pressed her lips together. "Nothing happened in that suite." "Then why were you in it?" Silence. "Then, we needed space to prep. At midnight." "You don't understand how these events work." "Then help me understand why you used your maiden name." She stood up too fast, chair scraping tile. "Because I am allowed to have an identity separate from being your wife." There it was again. The pivot. My evidence became control. Her lying became my insecurity. I slid Megan's message across the table. "I already spoke to Ryan's wife," I said. That broke something. Claire's face emptied out, then hardened. "You had no right." "No. You lost the right to decide that when you made me part of the cover story." Her eyes flicked over the booking confirmation. When she spoke, the truth came in pieces. She said it started as easier on trips because Ryan understood the job and pressure. She said she never meant for it to become regular. She said the married line was just shorthand. "Don't turn your choices into weather," I said. When Claire finally understood what I had, her face changed in seconds. I didn't sleep in our bedroom that night. I took a blanket to the couch and listened to Claire moving around upstairs, opening drawers, shutting them softly, crying once, and then deciding even that was too revealing. Around 3 in the morning, she came down and said my name like she wanted truce. "We can handle this privately," she said. "Please don't blow up multiple lives because you're hurt." That sentence made the decision for me. Not because I wanted spectacle. Because even then, even after being caught, she was still framing the truth as my emotional excess. Multiple lives were already blown up. I was just the last person expected to notice the debris. I told her we were separating effective immediately, and that I wanted her out of the house by the weekend, or I would leave myself and let the lawyers sort possession later. She looked stunned that I was speaking in practical terms. At 5:42 a.m., Sitting in my truck outside a grocery store parking lot because I couldn't stand our driveway anymore, I called Megan back. She answered on the first ring. I told her Claire had confirmed enough. Not every detail, but enough. Megan didn't cry. She just asked whether I thought HR needed the emails. I said yes if she wanted a record, especially because the spouse's safe language suggested this wasn't isolated. By noon, both of us had contacted attorneys. By evening, Megan had filed a complaint with Ryan's company attaching the Mercer booking, the hidden itinerary thread, and a statement about expense fraud and misuse of travel accounts. I sent the same documents only after redacting anything personal that didn't matter. I wasn't trying to burn down the company. I was documenting a culture built on deceit. The fallout was ugly and anticlimactic in all realistic ways. Claire moved into a furnished short-term rental and texted mostly about logistics. Mutual friends went silent, then selectively curious. Nina came over with boxes and trash bags and the kind of quiet loyalty that makes you want to cry harder than sympathy does. Ryan was placed on leave within a week. Claire wasn't fired immediately, but she lost client travel and got shifted off the accounts she had built her career on. I told Megan before sunrise, and the silence afterward felt like a gunshot. It's been 9 months now, and the strangest part is how ordinary healing looks from the outside. There was no cinematic ending, no perfect apology. No one knocked on my door to congratulate me for choosing self-respect. There was just paperwork, a temporary mattress in the guest room after Claire finally moved the rest of her things out, the humiliating process of explaining to relatives that yes, the marriage was over. No, I didn't want to discuss the details at Thanksgiving. There was therapy every Tuesday at 6. There were mornings when I could function and mornings when a hotel commercial was enough to ruin my appetite. For a while I obsessed over the physical questions because they were easier to picture than the psychological ones. How many times? Which city? Which room? Then my therapist asked me, what hurts more, the affair or the management of your perception? I answered too fast. The affair. Later I realized that wasn't true. What hollowed me out was being carefully trained to mistrust my own instincts. Claire didn't just lie about where she was. She built language around my doubt, so that noticing reality would feel like a character flaw. That's why the sentence still matters to me. They're all married. On paper, it sounds wholesome, respectable, safe. That was the point. Some people hide behind chaos. Others hide behind credibility. Wedding rings, job titles, conference badges, polished voices, all the little symbols we treat like moral shorthand. None of them mean anything if the person wearing them benefits from your passivity. I don't hate Claire anymore, which is not the same as forgiving her. I just understand her better than I wanted to. She valued control more than intimacy. Ryan did too. Maybe that's what they really shared. Not chemistry, not destiny, just a mutual preference for being believed without being examined. Last weekend, I rebuilt the vegetable bed behind the house. It was cold and early, the kind of gray morning Claire used to sleep through. I set the new boards in place, packed dirt around them, and watched a green shoot hold steady in the wind. My practical advice is simple. When reassurance comes prepackaged, ask for specifics and write the answers down.